to the social media outreach of the National Black Parents Association. And I was thinking about it. I thought I would just call this the Young Black Scholar Nation. The Young Black Scholar Nation, because after all, that's what you're doing. You are raising young black scholars, if we have anything to do with it. And that's, so we might as well just start calling ourselves that, the Young Black Scholar Nation. So again, welcome to the National Black Parents Association Social Media Outreach, your most trusted source of information, inspiration, and imagination for you to advocate and motivate your young black scholar. Yes, I'm Augustus Corbett. I'm Reverend Corbett, and I am just fired up about the National Black Parents Association and all that we want to do to help you, again, raise young black scholars. Now, what I want to talk to you about today for a few minutes is I know that we're at the end of a school year, and it's been a really serious school year. We just came through, or we're still working our way through, a very serious, deadly pandemic. Almost 1 million people have died, according to some estimates. And a great number of those people, or a disproportionate percentage of those people, were African American and Hispanic people. So we have really gone through a lot over the last year. And maybe the ones who have suffered the most, or who have been hit the hardest, maybe have been the young people, the children, the students. I don't know. Not in terms of the disease, because it seems to be that the disease, the virus, really affects older folks more. But in terms of their school studies, the academics, oh, it's been something. And you parents, you who had to become all of a sudden a teacher and a tutor and all of that overnight because of the pandemic, bravo to you. I shout you out. You all really, really, really did a great job bringing your young black scholar through this last year. And that's part of the reason why we have rekindled or relaunched the National Black Parents Association, because we want to come alongside and help you. Now, again, what I know is about to go on right now, if it's not started already, is there are going to be a lot of end of school year tests. Now, some states or some school districts I know have waived those tests because of the pandemic, but some of them have not. And here's a little secret that you may not know much about. The secret is African American children tend to perform a lot worse on standardized tests than white, Asian, and Hispanic children. There is a gap in the test scores between black children and their white, Asian, and Hispanic counterparts. We call that gap the achievement gap. The achievement gap. Again, it is a persistent, nagging gap in the test scores of black kids in comparison to white, Asian, and Hispanic kids. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. I want to offer you some tips on how you can help your child prepare in the future for standardized tests. So let's look at that. I'm going to give you 7 tips to help your child perform better on standardized tests. Now, you say, well, how do I know anything about this? Well, like I told you yesterday, I don't know if you listened to that video. Go back and listen to that video where I talked to you about the National Black Parents Association, who we are, what we want to do, et cetera, et cetera. I was an educator. It wasn't for long, but I was an educator. And I had to prepare my students for that end of year test. And I saw personally up front and close that a lot of the African American students, bright students, smart, just as smart as any other student, but a lot of them simply did not perform as well on standardized tests as some of the other kids. And there are reasons why, and I want to share with you several reasons why, but most importantly, again, I want to give you some tips on how you can help your child perform better, okay? So why is that the case? Why do black kids tend to tend to perform poorly on these standardized tests in comparison to their white, Asian, and Hispanic counterparts? Well, the folks who are experts in this area have offered several reasons. Three of them I listed here. Many black scholars believe that the standardized tests oftentimes are culturally biased. And we know that to be the case, right? If you take the average standardized test, you're going to get a whole lot in the area of European history and European culture and European art and European painters and European, all kinds of European stuff. And that is just not something we grow up hearing and listening to or even having any kind of interest in, right? Because we're African Americans. If you want to capture our attention and imagination, start teaching some more African history, since this country consists of a great number of African people, or people who are descended from Africa. But yeah, if the test has a whole lot of this European stuff on it, well, absolutely, that is not something that we sit around the dinner table and talk about. I mean, it's just not something that we're usually interested in. And there are other ways that the test is typically biased as well culturally. That is one of the biggest ways. All right. Another issue is the socioeconomic factors that affect a lot of African American students. A lot of African American students in particular school districts are beneath the poverty line. A lot of them get aid from the school and from the government just to eat. So quite naturally, when those kids get home, many of them are hungry and they're dealing with all sorts of things. And so they're not going to be as focused academically, as other kids, which will impact their ability to sit down and focus on tests. I can tell you for certain that a lot of kids in these inner city communities, in these inner city school districts, a lot of those kids go home and go to bed hungry. We think that, that it's just the people out on the streets, the homeless people who are hungry. No, a lot of times it is a lot of these kids who are showing up at public schools, and that's where many of them get their meals. That's where they get their 3 meals. That's where they get their 1 or 2 meals, their meal and maybe a cup of snacks at school. And so when they get home, the last thing on their minds is preparing for a standardized test. That's not all African American students. I realize that. But that is a lot. And that's one reason, another reason why there is that gap in the test scores of black children in comparison to their white, Asian, and Hispanic counterparts. And the other one is inadequate preparation for all the reasons that I just gave you under the socioeconomic factors. All right? So the question becomes, what can we do about this? How can we get our children better prepared to take these standardized tests so that we can begin to close the academic achievement gap? But, I apologize for saying economic. There is definitely an economic gap as well between blacks and whites. But today we're focused on the academic achievement gap, okay? The gap in the test scores, the standardized test scores between black children and their white, Asian, and Hispanic counterparts, all right? And that's really one of the reasons why the National Black Parents Association is so important. Remember, our mission is to defeat the school-to-prison pipeline, It is to develop young black scholars, and it is to decrease the achievement gap, the academic achievement gap. So that's why we exist. That's our purpose. So let me give you these tips. Let me give you 7 tips, 7 suggestions on ways that you can help your young black scholar do better on these standardized tests. All right, tips for better performance. Tip number 1, wait, you went too fast. Tip number 1, why not, if you can afford it, why not enroll your child in a test-taking prep class? Believe it or not, a lot of their white and Asian counterparts are doing exactly that. The parents of those kids are doing just that. Those kids are no more smarter than black kids. This is not a matter of whether or not one race of kids is smarter than another race. That's not what the racists would have you believe that. The white supremacists would have you believe that, but it's not true. It is nowhere near being true. There is no smarter race of people than some other race of people. I want to make that clear to you. What we're seeing is the result of the things that I mentioned: cultural biases, socioeconomic factors, which play into black kids being less prepared oftentimes for these tests. So why not, if you can afford it, and if you can afford it, there may be help through your school district, there may be help through your local church or through some other organization, some financial help to help you pay for some kind of prep class for the standardized tests that your child may be taking. Okay, so that is one way that you can help them get better prepared for the standardized tests. Tip number two, get tutors in test-taking subject matters. So find out what the subject matters are going to be on your child's standardized tests, and if you can afford it, we're back to what you can afford again. But if you can afford it, or if you can find some financial support, outside the home, then get your child a tutor in the subject matter that's going to be on the test. A good tutor, someone who can help that child understand the material that the teacher went over. I was a teacher, and I know that when you got 30-something kids sitting in a class, and you got 5 or 6 classes in that day, and you're trying to reach some point in your, structure, trying to reach some point in your lesson plan, you don't have the time to stop and give each kid individual attention. Now, I used to do all sorts of creative things to try and help those kids, the ones who were a little slower picking up stuff, or some of the kids weren't slow, but they weren't slower than the other students. They didn't have as much interest. And then some kids don't learn the same way, right? Some kids can learn from the teacher at the board. Other kids learn better when they're doing something. I taught chemistry, so I was able to teach my kids with experiments. I could bring chemistry alive with the experiments. And that was necessary with a subject like chemistry, because different kids learn different ways. I tell you one thing I really enjoyed doing once. I was trying to figure out how to get my African-American male kids involved. And so I came up with the ideal of them writing a rap song using the elements from the elements chart. Okay, and there were like 110 or so of them. And so they went home. I gave them a couple of weeks, and then we had a rap contest. And they came back, and various ones of them rapped their song using those difficult words, those difficult chemicals. It was amazing those kids were able to rap that stuff. It was amazing. And the kid who actually won the contest was a kid who was not doing very well academically. But after he did that, it proved to him, it proved to me, it proved to everyone how smart this kid really was to take those big chemical words and put it in a rap song. So my point is, different kids learn different ways. And because teachers are oftentimes wedded to the board, wedded to the chalkboard, and just are teaching one way and not, and then again, because of logistics, just can't give all those kids individual attention, having a tutor is a very good ideal if you can afford it. And if you cannot afford it, tap into whatever resources your school may offer or some other local organization. So let's go back. Tip number one, if you can, get your child in a test-taking prep class. Tip number two is get tutors in test-taking subject matters. Whatever the subject matters are on that test, find out what they are, and get your child a tutor a few weeks or months before he's having or she's having to take the test. Tip three, get your child in AP classes. I cannot stress this enough. Get your child in AP, Advanced Placement classes. That's where they need to be, because they're going to get better teaching, they're going to get better instruction, they're going to work harder, they're going to, because their peers in those classes tend to be more focused academically, they're going to be more challenged. Get your kids in the AP classes, all right? Because of the reasons that I just gave you. And so they're going to leave those classes and be better prepared to take those tests. I remember when my son was in high school, son and daughter, both of them, we kept them in AP classes. I knew to do that. I write about that in my book. I knew to make sure that they were in AP classes. So the funny thing is, when my son started his first year of college, he came back after like the midway of the school year and said, "Dad, I am so glad that you made me stay in those AP classes, because this first year of college is a breeze. I've seen most of this stuff." And sure enough, he graduated college with like a 3.7 something throughout his college career. And a lot of it was because of the preparation that he got from those AP classes. And by the way, he also played basketball while he was in high school, and he worked a job. But this is the way I did it. I told him, I said, look, if you want to play basketball, which is where his heart was, that was the thing he wanted to do. I said, dude, if you want to play basketball, you got to hit these books. And the rule in our house was, our kids, you cannot bring less than a B in this house. Period. Nothing less than a B in this house. Anything less than that is a no-no. And they didn't disappoint. Maybe in a future broadcast, I will talk about some of the rules that we laid down in our home that I think helped our kids do well in high school and then in college. All right. Now, let's go back. Tip number 3, get your child in AP classes. Now, a little secret here. Most African-American students in public schools are directed away from AP classes, and many of them, a disproportionate number of them, are directed to the the mentally challenged class. What is that class called? I'm sorry. It will come back to me. I'm sorry. It slips my mind right now. It'll come back to me. But they're directed to those classes rather than the AP classes. And when I say they're directed, oftentimes it's the guidance counselors and the teachers, okay? And for various reasons. I talk about all that in my book. I'll deal with it in future broadcasts, all right? But You want to pressure your child and pressure his teachers or her teachers and the guidance counselors to get your kids in the AP classes. You will not regret that, and that will help them perform better on those classes. Special education classes, that's what I was trying to think of. A lot of our kids are disproportionately sent to special education classes rather than the AP classes. And it's not based on the fact that more black kids need special education. That's not the case. It is because of racial biases in the school system. That's part of the reason why I wrote this book, because of what I saw and what the research shows happening to our kids in public schools. All right, so it is your business, it is your job to get your children in AP classes. All right, let's go back. What is the next tip? Tip number 4, enroll your child in great schools with awesome teachers. As much as you can, as much as you're able to. And that's a whole nother issue right there with the fact that a lot of the poor performing schools are concentrated in areas that are highly minority populated. That's a whole nother issue, okay? That's a whole nother ball game right by itself. And so I'll deal with that in a later, it's so much to talk about. I'll deal with that in a later broadcast as well. But if you're able to relocate to an area that has better schools, your child's education is just that important. If you're wanting to develop young black scholars, you got to take them where the scholarship is at. And oftentimes that is in the schools that are, away from the inner city areas, unfortunately. Now, look, teachers, educators from inner city schools, I don't write me, don't get mad with me, because I know that a lot of you are doing a great job with what you got, okay, with what you have to deal with. I get it, and I applaud you, and I shout you out. There are some over in South Dallas that are doing a tremendous job, all right? But for the most part, let's be real. Let's keep it real. The research shows that inner city schools, the ones that serve highly minority populated school districts and neighborhoods, they don't do well by black children. So parents, as much as it is in you, as much as you can do it, can afford to do it, if you got to save, whatever you got to do, if you can relocate your family to neighborhoods that have better schools, do it. Do it. You will not regret it. You will not regret it. So that is the next tip. Enroll your child in great schools with awesome teachers. And by the way, let me come back and tell you that if you can hook them up with awesome teachers who happen to be black and black males at that, oh, you are really fortunate then. You are really fortunate then, okay? We need to double, triple, quadruple, quintuple the number of black teachers in public schools. So if you're able to get your child under a black teacher who is a great teacher. Now look, if the teacher is black but not a great teacher, who cares? Okay? So don't base this exclusively on race. I have had some great white teachers. All right? I know some great white teachers, and I know some great black teachers. But I can show you from the data that great black teachers who don't have that cultural gap, if you will, that cultural barrier to our children, who is also a great teacher on top of that, that is the best of both worlds. So if you're able to find that for your child, all the better. So tip number 4 is enroll your child in great schools with awesome teachers. And if you can, black teachers. All right. Tip 5, instill confidence in your child. Tell him or her, you can do it. You can do well on this test. You can do well answering these questions. Speak confidence to them. If you speak confidence to them, they're going to have confidence. Don't tell them, don't instill fear, don't instill doubt. Don't do that. Don't say those kinds of things. Tell them they can do it. They can achieve. Let them know that. Tell them that all the time, all the time. I don't care how poorly they may be doing. Okay? We have a family in our church, and the son is a very, very intelligent kid, very smart kid, very, very, very smart kid. This kid is going to do well in life. He's blessed and fortunate to have the parents that he has. But he doesn't do very well with math. And I think it's more of a mental thing than anything else, because he's a bright kid. I mean, he's a very, very bright kid and excel in his other courses. But when it comes to math, there is that issue. So regardless of that, when I speak of him as a mathematician. I say to him, that's my young mathematician right there. That's my young black math scholar. Yes, speak it, say it, instill confidence in them. Let them know that you believe in them. If you believe in them, they will start believing in themselves. Yes. So no matter how poorly they are doing in a subject, tell them that they are just geniuses, right? Look, when I was in grade school, I had one teacher in particular. He was a white teacher, by the way, Arnold Kaysen, Mr. Kaysen. Mr. Kaysen used to tell me that I was the smartest kid in this class. Now, my behavior was just awful, okay? It was awful. I mean, I would fight Mr. Kaysen, okay? It's a wonder he didn't knock me out. You know, here I am, this young boy, and being disrespectful. But he thought so highly of me, and he was such a great person that Mr. Kaysen overlooked a lot of that. He did what he had to do to keep me in control. But he told me all the time, my nickname is Gus. Augustus Corbett is my name, but everybody back home calls me Gus. My father's name was Gus. My grandfather's name was Gus. And he used to say to me, Gus, you are the smartest kid in this class. If I could just get you to do right, and he would say that, including the white kids. I mean, that was something back in the 70s for a white man to say to a black kid in front of the whole class, you're the smartest kid in this class. And white kids would be listening. And that's what he would say to me. And here's the impact that it had on me. I started believing it. I believe it to this day because Mr. Kaysen said it so much. And he said it although my behavior was bad, although my grade performance was not good, I could have done a lot better, but because of my behavior and issues and so forth, I was not really performing at where a lot of the other kids were, but he knew I had it in me to do it. And that really, 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 really gave me the confidence that I needed. For example, later on, when I ended up in college, majoring in chemistry of all things. Here I am, a high school dropout, majoring in chemistry, studying physics, studying calculus, applied math, inorganic chemistry, advanced chemistry, physical chemistry, all of this stuff. Yet I was as confident as anybody that I could do it, and a lot of it came from what Mr. Kaysen had said to me as a child many years earlier. So parents, instill confidence. I don't care how poorly they're performing, still tell them how smart they are. All right? So tip number 5, instill confidence. Now, let's get a little practical here. The next tip is before that test, make sure your child get adequate sleep the night before the test. All right? So we got to get a little practical here. No child can perform at his or her peak performance if they're in class sleeping. Their minds can't function well. They can't focus. They can barely keep their heads up. Yes, that's going to really impact their performance on that test. So these practical things are critical. Don't let them stay up the night before 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, and then expect them to go and perform well on the test. That's not going to happen. So make sure that they get to bed and get adequate sleep the night before. No TV, no cell phone, no YouTube, TikTok, or none of that. Take it all away and make sure that they go to sleep the night before the test. Okay? All right. All right. Let's go back. And the final tip, another practical tip. Tip number 7, provide them a good, nutritious, but lightweight breakfast the morning of the test. Certainly don't let them go to school that day hungry, but at the same time, not some great, big, heavy breakfast, grits and eggs and pile of bacon and pancakes and all of that. That's going to knock them out. They're going to be sitting in there, fighting that food demon, So don't do that. A very nutritious, lightweight breakfast so that they are not hungry, but they are also agile mentally and physically. So those 7 tips, I think, can help your child do better on standardized tests if they're having issues. Okay? Let's just go back through them very quickly. A great, nutritious meal, but light breakfast before the test. Tip 6, make sure they get adequate sleep the night before the test. Tip 5, instill confidence. Tip 4, enroll your child in great schools with awesome teachers, if you're able to do so. Tip 3, get your child or children in AP classes. No matter what the teachers say, no matter what the guidance counselors say, you get them in those classes. Tip 2, get tutors in the test-taking subject matters of that test. All right? Again, I know that this is based in large part on whether you can afford it, but like I said, ask the school for help. Ask the teachers for help. Maybe the teacher can tutor them after school or something. I don't know. Maybe someone in your church or someone in your sorority, your fraternity, someone in, some young person at the local college campus who would be glad to help at a minimum price or maybe even donate their time. Okay? Get tutoring for your child in test-taking subjects. And, let's go back. That's 3. Tip 2. Tip 1, if you can, get them in a test-taking prep class. That's the little secret that many of us are unaware of. A lot of the white and Asian kids are taking those prep classes. They're coming in there, and we're thinking that they are all geniuses. But the truth is they're just better prepared. They're better prepared because they took those classes, those AP classes. They're better prepared because they took that prep class. They got some tutoring. They're better prepared because they are confident. Their parents have been instilling confidence in them. All the things that I mentioned here. Okay? So listen, you are raising a young black scholar. It doesn't matter to me where their performance is right now. You're still raising a young black scholar. And the National Black Parents Association is reigniting and relaunching so that we can be a support to you, so that we can be your trusted source of information, inspiration, and imagination to motivate and advocate for your young black scholar. I hope you got something from this. Please share it all over your Facebook page or share it with your YouTube followers. Talk to your friends about it, you know, your church member friends, your coworkers, anyone who is raising a black child that is matriculating through the public school system. I can almost guarantee you they need the support that the National Black Parents Association is offering. By the way, if you're not a follower, a Facebook follower of the National Black Parents Association, do yourself a favor and help us out. Go on Facebook and become a follower. If you are not a subscriber of the National Black Parents Association's YouTube channel, please stop by our YouTube channel and become a subscriber and hit the little bell so that you can get notifications when we do videos. We're gonna upload videos on a regular basis. We got a lot of great things planned for the rest of 2021. And thank you, by the way. I asked some of you all to go to YouTube and subscribe. We started out yesterday with 14 subscribers. When I got to YouTube yesterday, we had picked up a few new subscribers. Thank you all very much. Let's keep up the great work. Remember, we want 100,000 subscribers by the end of 2021. We can do it. We can do it. We can get the word out. All right? All right. Thank you for tuning in, and God bless you all. Bye.